Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Worship Wednesday. And I pray that as you're entering or exiting Hump Day, that your day has been blessed and glorious, and that you have found peace and comfort in the arms of God, and knowing that He or she is right there with you. Today, I want to talk about what is hindering your worship. What are you holding on to? What are you letting weigh you down and keep you from truly worshiping God? If we look at some of the examples in the Bible of people who had hindrances that were kind of keeping them from being able to fully worship and fully embrace the love of God, we would be here all day, but I'm going to give you a few that, come to mind and come to my recollection. And one is, the lame man laying at the pool or laying at the city gates, and Jesus was entering in, and he cried out, and Jesus asked him, "What do you want?" And he said, "I would," he's like, "What do you mean?" And God, Jesus asked him again, and he said, "I want to be made whole." And he said, "Take up thy bed and walk." So he had to throw off his cloak that he had been using to cover himself. Sometimes we have to remove some things that are weighing us down or keeping us from moving into the full, purpose and plan that God has for us. Then we have the Samaritan woman that was at the well. Jesus was sitting there, and he asked her, for a drink, and she had just brought her watering pots. It was in the heat of the day because she was trying to avoid all the other townspeople. And when we look at this interaction, when she got done and she finished giving all her excuses and Jesus dispelled all of them, she dropped her watering pots. And during that time, watering pots were made of clay. They weren't made of metal. They weren't made of glass. They were made of clay. And when she dropped them, I'm going to say they broke. And she wasn't able to go back and pick them up again. She had to get new watering pots. But sometimes we have to break the old in order to get something new, to be able to carry the love of God and the grace of God with us. Sometimes we have to get rid of the old to bring in something new. Then we have, blind Bartimaeus who yelled, who was crying out for Jesus, and he was being told to be quiet, and he was told not to make a fuss. And Jesus said, call him to come here. And, then all of a sudden the people were okay with that. But sometimes we have to make our voice heard. We have to make sure that we are crying loud enough that Jesus hears our hearts cry and hears us saying his name, saying her name, and allowing them to hear our heart's plea. So in these instances, we see they each had to do something. One had to get rid of a cloak that was covering him up and let it go and take up his bed and start walking. The woman at the wells, the Samaritan woman at the well, she had to break her watering pots and go and tell everybody, and then, probably get new ones. And then blind Bartimaeus had to be able to cry out loud enough to get Jesus's attention. And sometimes when life is chaotic and life is confusing and life is going around and around and around, sometimes we have to cry out so loud that Jesus says, "I know that voice. That's my child's voice. Tell him or her to come here." So on this hashtag Worship Wednesday, hashtag hold on, I'm going to put Jesus on that. All issues, hashtag you've been released. Cry out, drop your pots, and get rid of your cloak and follow Jesus. Let him or her give you what you need on this day and be able to worship in spirit and in truth. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you on tomorrow.